Have you ever looked at someone who is 70 or 80 years old and wondered, what did they do differently to reach this age with so much peace? Maybe they don't have a perfect life. Maybe they have experienced loss, disappointment, financial struggles, loneliness, and pain. Yet somehow, they still wake up with gratitude. They still laugh. They still enjoy a simple meal. They still appreciate the morning sunlight. And they don't seem to be constantly fighting with life. Buddhism teaches us something profound. A long life is not only about counting the number of years you survive, it is also about the way you live those years. The Buddha repeatedly emphasized awareness, moderation, wholesome actions, mental discipline, compassion, and freedom from destructive attachments. These teachings were not presented as a magical formula that guarantees a certain lifespan. Rather, they point toward a way of living that can support health, peace, resilience, and a meaningful existence. And this is where today's topic becomes fascinating. There may be certain qualities in the way you think, behave, eat, react, love, forgive, and handle difficulties that reveal something important about the kind of life you are building. So in this video, we're going to explore 8 Buddhist signs that your way of living may be supporting a longer, healthier, and more peaceful life. And the first sign begins with something most people completely underestimate. 1. You know how to live with moderation. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is the middle way, the understanding that life becomes destructive when we constantly move toward extremes. Not too much, not too little, not endless indulgence, not unnecessary deprivation. And this teaching becomes incredibly powerful when you look at how people actually live today. Someone feels stressed, so they eat more. They feel empty, so they spend money. They feel lonely, so they scroll for hours. They feel unsuccessful, so they work until their body is exhausted. Then they wake up the next morning and do it all over again. They keep searching for something that will finally make them feel satisfied, without realizing that the endless search itself may be creating their suffering. Think about the person who says, just one more meal, one more purchase, one more episode, one more hour of work, one more drink, one more achievement, one more distraction, and somehow one more never becomes enough. The problem isn't always the thing itself. Food isn't the enemy. Money isn't the enemy. Success isn't the enemy. Pleasure isn't the enemy. The danger begins when something you enjoy becomes something you cannot live without. When your happiness depends on having more, your mind becomes a prisoner of desire. This is why moderation can be such a powerful way of living. Imagine reaching the end of a long day and being able to say, I've had enough. You don't need to finish everything on the plate. You don't need to buy everything you see. You don't need to answer every argument. You don't need to prove yourself to everyone. You don't need to chase every opportunity simply because you're afraid another one won't come. There is tremendous strength in knowing when to stop. And perhaps this matters more as you grow older. Your body changes. Your energy changes. Your priorities change. Eventually, you realize that life isn't about collecting as much as possible before time runs out. It's about learning what is actually worth carrying. Because every unnecessary desire you release gives you a little more space to breathe, a little more peace to enjoy, and a little more freedom to live. So ask yourself honestly, what in your life has quietly become too much? Because sometimes the secret to living better isn't adding something new. Sometimes it's simply knowing when enough is enough. You don't need everything you want to live well. Sometimes knowing when to stop is more powerful than knowing how to get more. 2. You don't carry anger for years. Think about what anger does to you after the argument is already over. The other person may have gone home, eaten dinner, laughed with someone, and completely moved on with their life, but you're still there replaying the conversation in your head. You remember their exact words. You imagine the perfect response you wish you had given. Your body becomes tense. Your mind becomes restless. And sometimes, you wake up the next morning angry about something that happened yesterday. Worse, sometimes you carry something that happened 5, 10, or even 20 years ago as if it happened this morning. The person who hurt you may have forgotten the incident completely, but you are still carrying the weight of it inside your own chest. This is why Buddhist wisdom places such importance on releasing hatred and resentment, because anger can become a strange kind of prison. You may think you're punishing the person who hurt you, but they may not even know you're still suffering. You are the one paying the price every day. Every time you replay the betrayal, you reopen the wound. Every time you mentally argue with someone who isn't even there, you give that person another piece of your peace. And slowly, something frightening happens. You begin allowing an old moment to control your present life. But letting go does not mean saying that what happened was acceptable. It doesn't mean trusting someone who repeatedly hurt you. It doesn't mean allowing toxic people back into your life. Sometimes wisdom means creating distance. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means protecting yourself permanently. But there is a difference between protecting yourself and poisoning yourself with hatred. You can remember the lesson without continuously reliving the pain. Imagine carrying a heavy stone everywhere you go. You carry it to breakfast. You carry it to work. You carry it into your relationships. You carry it into bed at night. And then one day you finally put it down. Nothing about the past has changed, but you have changed your relationship with it. That is what letting go can feel like. Maybe someone betrayed you. Maybe someone humiliated you. Maybe someone walked away when you needed them most. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You can acknowledge the pain, learn from it, establish boundaries, and still decide, I refuse to spend the rest of my life suffering for something that already happened. Because your life is happening right now. Don't allow yesterday's cruelty to steal today's peace. Don't spend the remaining years of your life fighting battles with people who aren't even standing in front of you anymore. Sometimes, a longer and more peaceful life doesn't begin by adding something to your life. It begins by finally putting down what you've been carrying for far too long. 3. You can enjoy simple things. There is a strange tragedy happening in modern life. People spend years chasing the things they believe will finally make them happy, only to reach those things and discover that the feeling disappears almost immediately. They want a bigger house, a better car, more money, more followers, more recognition. And then they tell themselves, when I finally have this, I'll be happy. But when they get it, the mind quickly creates another destination, another goal, another purchase, another achievement. And suddenly, meanwhile, an entire lifetime is passing quietly in the background. Now imagine someone completely different. They wake up early, open the window, feel the morning air, make a simple cup of tea, and sit quietly for a few minutes. Nothing extraordinary is happening. No luxury car is parked outside. No crowd is applauding them. No one is telling them how successful they are. And yet, they are genuinely present. They taste their food. Instead of rushing through it, they notice the sound of rain. They enjoy a conversation with someone they love. They take a walk without constantly checking their phone. They can sit in silence without feeling that something is wrong. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes incredibly powerful. Life is happening now, not when you become rich, not when everyone finally respects you, not when you reach the next milestone, not 5 years from today. This moment you're experiencing right now is a piece of your life that will never come back. And if you are constantly waiting for a better life before allowing yourself to appreciate the present one, you may eventually discover something heartbreaking. You spent your life waiting for life to begin. Think about how many ordinary moments you have already forgotten. A meal with your family, an evening conversation, your parents calling you, sitting somewhere peaceful, laughing over something completely meaningless, watching the rain through a window. At the time, those moments felt ordinary. But years later, you may realize they were some of the most precious moments you ever had. And perhaps this becomes even more important as you grow older, because eventually you understand that the things you once thought were insignificant were actually the things that made life beautiful. You don't need every day to be exciting. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't need to escape your ordinary life. If you can find peace in an ordinary morning, gratitude in a simple meal, and happiness in the presence of someone you love, you have discovered something that money cannot buy. Because sometimes the richest person in the room isn't the one who owns the most. It's the one who can sit quietly, look around, and honestly say, I have enough. 4. You don't live in constant fear of the future. There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from physical work. It comes from constantly living inside a future that hasn't happened yet. You are sitting at home, but your mind is already somewhere tomorrow, next month, or 5 years from now. You think, what if I lose my money? What if I get sick? What if my family falls apart? What if I fail? What if the person I love leaves? What if everything I've built suddenly disappears? And the frightening part is that nothing may actually be wrong in this moment. Your body is safe. You're breathing. You're sitting in your room. But your mind is making you suffer through hundreds of imaginary futures. Buddhist wisdom offers a powerful reminder. Everything changes. Your body changes. Your circumstances change. Your relationships change. Your emotions change. Even the things you believe will remain forever can eventually disappear. This reality can sound frightening, but resisting it doesn't make it disappear. In fact, constantly demanding certainty from life can create a tremendous amount of suffering. Think about how often you've worried about something that never happened. You spent an entire night imagining the worst possible outcome, only to wake up and discover that life continued normally. How many hours have you sacrificed to problems that existed only inside your imagination? How many peaceful mornings have been stolen by tomorrow? How many beautiful moments have you failed to notice because you were mentally preparing for disasters that never arrived? This doesn't mean becoming careless. Buddhism isn't telling you to stop planning or ignore reality. Prepare, but don't panic. Care, but don't obsess. Plan, but don't demand that life obey your plans. There is a difference between wisdom and fear. Wisdom asks, what can I do about this? Fear keeps asking, what if everything goes wrong? Imagine standing beside a river. You cannot command the water to stop moving. You can learn how to swim. You can build a bridge. You can choose where to cross. But you cannot freeze the river just because you're afraid of where it might flow. Life is similar. You cannot control every event, every person, or every outcome, but you can control how you respond. And perhaps one of the greatest signs that you are becoming wiser is when you finally understand, I don't need to know exactly what tomorrow will bring in order to be at peace today. Because tomorrow has not been given to you yet. Today has. So stop sacrificing the peace you actually have for a future you cannot completely control. Prepare for tomorrow when necessary, but then come back to this moment. Take the breath. Notice the people around you. Do what you can, and let the rest unfold. You cannot control the entire river of life, but you can learn how to move through it without drowning in fear. 5. You have learned to care for your body without becoming obsessed with it. There is a moment in life when you begin to realize something most people understand far too late. Your body has been carrying you through everything. Through your childhood, your struggles, your sleepless nights, your celebrations, your heartbreaks, your stress, and every ordinary morning you barely noticed. Yet many people treat their bodies like machines that are supposed to work endlessly. They ignore exhaustion, eat without awareness, sacrifice sleep, live under constant stress, and keep pushing themselves because they believe there will always be time to recover later. But the body remembers what the mind tries to ignore. Buddhist wisdom offers a different relationship with the body. It doesn't tell you to worship your appearance or become obsessed with staying young. But it also doesn't tell you to neglect the body. Instead, it encourages awareness. You notice when you're tired. You notice when you've eaten too much. You recognize when stress is changing the way you think and behave. You understand that your body has limits, and respecting those limits is not weakness. Think about someone who works all day, comes home exhausted, and instead of resting, immediately reaches for another distraction. They sleep too little, wake up tired, and then use caffeine to force themselves through another day. Eventually, the body begins whispering, then it speaks louder. And if those signals are ignored long enough, sometimes the body has no choice but to shout. This is why mindfulness matters. Instead of waiting until your body breaks down before listening to it, you begin paying attention earlier. You ask yourself, what does my body actually need right now? Maybe it needs rest. Maybe it needs movement. Maybe it needs better food. Maybe it needs less stress. Maybe it simply needs you to stop treating every minute of your day as something that must be productive. And there is another important lesson here. Caring for your body doesn't mean becoming terrified of aging. You don't have to look in the mirror every morning searching for another wrinkle. You don't have to measure your worth by your appearance. The body will change. That is part of being alive. The goal isn't to defeat aging. The goal is to care for the body while you have it. Because one day, you may look back and realize how much your body quietly did for you while you were busy chasing everything else. So eat with awareness. Rest when you need to. Move your body. Avoid habits that slowly destroy it. Pay attention to warning signs. And don't wait for your body to force you to appreciate what you should have protected all along. No habit can guarantee a long life, but learning to care for yourself can help you make the life you have healthier, more conscious, and more meaningful. Your body isn't a machine you own. It's the temporary home through which you experience this life. Treat it with respect while you're still living inside it. 6. You have meaningful connections with other people. A person can have a beautiful house, a successful career, money in the bank, and everything that looks impressive from the outside, and still come home at night feeling completely alone, because there is a kind of emptiness that money cannot touch. You can buy a comfortable bed, but you cannot buy someone who genuinely asks how your day went. You can own a beautiful dining table, but you cannot buy the feeling of sitting around it with people you love. And sometimes, the most painful loneliness isn't being physically alone. It's being surrounded by people and still feeling that nobody truly knows you. Buddhist teachings place enormous importance on compassion, loving kindness, generosity, and harmonious relationships. And this becomes especially meaningful as we grow older. When you're young, you may think life is about becoming independent, successful, and strong enough that you don't need anyone. But eventually, many people discover a painful truth. Being able to survive alone is not the same as having a fulfilling life. Human beings need connection. We need people with whom we can laugh, share our worries, remember old stories, and simply sit in silence without feeling uncomfortable. Think about the small moments that stay in your memory. A parent calling you just to ask if you've eaten. An old friend laughing about something that happened 20 years ago. Someone bringing you a cup of tea without asking. A family member sitting beside you when words aren't enough. Someone noticing that you're unusually quiet and asking, "Are you okay?" These moments may look insignificant while they're happening, but years later, you may realize they were some of the richest moments of your entire life. And meaningful connection doesn't mean having hundreds of friends. You can have thousands of followers and still have nobody you can call at midnight. You can know hundreds of people and still have no one you can be completely honest with. One genuine relationship can be worth more than 1,000 superficial ones. So don't underestimate the people who care about you. Call someone you haven't spoken to in a long time. Sit with your family without staring at your phone. Listen when someone is talking. Say thank you. Say, "I love you," while you still have the opportunity. Forgive when forgiveness is appropriate. And don't wait for a funeral to realize how precious someone's presence was. Because one day, the house may become quieter. The phone may stop ringing as often. People may move away. And you may look back and realize that the greatest treasures of your life were never the things you purchased. They were the people who sat beside you, the hands you held, the conversations you almost took for granted, the laughter you thought would last forever. A long life isn't only about how many years you live. It's also about how many meaningful moments you share with the people who make those years worth living. 7. You keep learning instead of becoming bitter. One of the most powerful signs that something inside you is still alive is curiosity. Not your age, not the number of wrinkles on your face, not how much money you have. Curiosity. There are people who are 30 years old, but already speak as if life has nothing left to offer them. They have stopped listening, stopped asking questions, stopped changing. And then there are people much older who are still fascinated by the world. They want to learn something new, understand another perspective, read another book, hear another story, and discover something they didn't know yesterday. Their bodies may be aging, but their minds haven't surrendered to life. Watch what happens when someone becomes convinced they already know everything. Every disagreement becomes an insult. Every new idea becomes a threat. Every mistake becomes someone else's fault. They say, "I've been through enough. I know how the world works." And slowly, their mind becomes a closed room. Nothing new enters. Nothing new grows. They don't realize that bitterness can make a person emotionally old long before their body becomes old. Buddhist practice encourages observation. Look at your thoughts, listen carefully, notice your reactions, question your assumptions. Instead of immediately saying, "I'm right," learn to ask, "Why do I feel this way?" Instead of asking, "Who is to blame?" sometimes ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" Imagine two people experiencing the same failure. One says, "Life is unfair. Nothing ever works for me." The other says, "This hurt, but what can I learn from it?" The event is the same. The pain may even be the same, but their relationship with the pain is completely different. This is one of the deepest forms of resilience, turning experience into wisdom instead of turning experience into bitterness. Even suffering can teach you. Failure can teach you. Rejection can teach you. Losing someone can teach you. Aging can teach you what truly matters. You don't have to enjoy every experience to learn from it. And perhaps this is why some older people seem strangely young inside. They haven't stopped being students. They still ask questions. They still laugh at themselves. They can say, "I was wrong." They can change their opinion when they discover something better. Never become so proud of what you know that you become blind to what you don't know. Because the moment you believe there is nothing left to learn, you stop growing. Your body may grow older with time, but as long as your mind remains curious, humble, and willing to learn, some part of you will always remain beautifully alive. So don't stop becoming a student of life. Keep looking, keep listening, keep questioning, keep learning. Because perhaps growing older isn't about becoming someone who has all the answers. It's about becoming someone wise enough to keep asking better questions. 8. You are at peace with the fact that life is impermanent. And finally, perhaps the deepest sign of all, you understand that you will not live forever. At first, that thought can feel terrifying. Most people spend their lives trying not to think about it. They avoid conversations about aging. They hide the signs of getting older. They keep themselves busy so they don't have to sit quietly with the reality that time is moving forward. But Buddhism asks you to look directly at something most people desperately try to escape. Everything is temporary. Your body is temporary. Your possessions are temporary. Your relationships are temporary. Even this exact moment will disappear. And, strangely, when you truly understand impermanence, life can become more precious, not less. Think about a sunset. You know it will disappear in a few minutes, and that's exactly why you stop and look at it. Imagine that the people you love would be with you forever. You might postpone the conversation. You might ignore the phone call. You might think, "I'll spend time with them tomorrow." But when you understand that time is limited, tomorrow stops feeling guaranteed. Suddenly, ordinary things become extraordinary. A meal with your family feels different. Your mother's voice sounds more precious. An old friend's message makes you smile. You notice the morning sunlight entering your room. You listen more carefully when someone speaks. You stop rushing through every moment as if life is something you need to finish. Because here's the painful truth. One day, one of your ordinary days will be your last ordinary day. You won't know which morning it is. You won't know which conversation is the final one. You won't know which hug will be the last hug. And that's not meant to frighten you. It's meant to wake you up. Buddhist wisdom doesn't ask you to become obsessed with death. It asks you to become more awake to life. When you accept that things change, you stop wasting so much energy trying to make them permanent. You don't have to desperately fight every wrinkle, every goodbye, every change in circumstance. You can care deeply while understanding that nothing can be held forever. And this changes the question. Instead of constantly asking, "How can I live forever?" you begin asking something much more meaningful. How can I truly live while I'm here? Maybe you forgive someone you've been angry with for years. Maybe you call someone you've been meaning to call. Maybe you finally sit down and enjoy a meal without touching your phone. Maybe you stop postponing happiness until some imaginary future arrives. Because accepting impermanence isn't giving up on life. It's finally realizing how precious life is. You don't need to know how many years remain. You only need to understand that this moment is here now, and it will never come back exactly as it is. So breathe. Look around. Appreciate the people beside you. Notice the life you're already living. Because perhaps the deepest form of wisdom isn't learning how to escape the end. It's learning how to stop missing the life you have while you're still living it. So, do these Buddhist signs guarantee that you will live a long life? No. No philosophy, habit, or spiritual teaching can promise you a specific number of years. Life remains uncertain. But Buddhism gives us something perhaps even more valuable than a prediction about how long we will live. It teaches us how to live wisely while we are here. If you practice moderation, if you release unnecessary anger, if you appreciate simple things, if you stop demanding certainty from life, if you care for your body, if you nurture meaningful relationships, if you remain curious, and if you accept impermanence instead of constantly fighting it, then regardless of how many years you are given, you may begin experiencing something much deeper, a life with less unnecessary suffering and more awareness. Because perhaps the real goal isn't simply to live a long life. Perhaps it is to reach the end of life and realize, I was actually here. I noticed it. I appreciated it. I loved. I learned. I lived. And if this message gave you something to think about, don't just watch the next video. Take one of these Buddhist principles with you today and practice it, because wisdom becomes powerful only when it changes the way you live.